Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Good. Today we have Jennifer Lieberman. She is the author of the new release. Year of the What? It's the first in a series and it has an interesting background, but just jump in and tell us a little bit about the book because I'm super dying to learn about the origin story here.
Okay, so the book is a spicy coming of age rom-com about Dana, who is 25 and freshly out of her first relationship. So she's heartbroken and horny in New York City, looking for the one.
Sometimes those things don't go hand in hand, though. Sometimes you need like a palate cleanse.
Well, that's the whole thing. So she's kind of on the naive, sheltered side, and she was saving herself for the one. That relationship ended 4 years later. So she's insecure and insecure about her own desires because prior to the relationship, she wasn't sexually active. So as much as there might have been some sort of a desire, it wasn't the same thing as a need once she already got used to having a sexual relationship regularly with her partner. So she's 6 months out of this first relationship and as having a tug of war between her desire to find her life partner and get married versus like there's this need she kind of needs to fill before she makes the wrong decision in, in choosing the wrong partner just because she needs to like get it over with.
Well, yeah, and sometimes, doing too much on a first date can send the wrong message about what you're looking for.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a book of kind of finding herself, dating misadventures. I compare it a little bit to Sex in the City. However, Dana's 25, so she's about 10 years younger than Carrie Bradshaw is when the Sex in the City series begins. So she's not as confident. She's not experienced at all. So she's kind of fumbling through the New York dating scene. And she's grew up sheltered, naive girl from Canada, now all alone in the big city.
I'm getting Emily in Paris vibes here.
Yeah, a little bit, but maybe not as confident yet as Emily in Paris. I
Okay.
feel like Emily is a little more self-assured.
She can be that way, although sometimes in her head she's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a snippet of the backstory, but tell us the backstory of how this book happened.
Okay, well, I'm an actor and I was working in theater in New York. I moved to LA to get into the film business. I had associate produced a film that won some awards in LA and decided, okay, maybe this is like my shot. It's time. So I transitioned from New York to LA. And after about a year and a half of spinning my wheels in LA, I was getting really frustrated. I couldn't find an agent. I couldn't get my foot in the door. And I went to a creative workshop. It wasn't an acting workshop, but it was a creative workshop. And I met a woman there, and she had some horses on her property. And I love horseback riding. I grew up riding, and I hadn't been horseback riding in so long because I was living in New York. Um, so we connected, and she invited me to come to her house to ride. And as we were writing, I found out that her husband owns an agency. And she suggested that I write myself a vehicle, I write myself some sort of project in order to invite industry and showcase myself. She said, "You're a good writer, you're a good performer. Put those two together, write yourself a piece, write yourself a one-woman show. You can show your range, you can show your writing, your acting, and and that's one way to get people to know your work and know who you are. Because when you first get to town, you don't have credits, you don't have a reel, you can't say, oh, yeah, check out this movie. I'm so and so character. So I I took her advice and we brainstormed some ideas when we were writing. And everything I suggested was too artsy. She's like, "You're not in New York anymore. This stuff is too artsy. You need something commercial. You need to get people out of the house. You're competing against everybody else who's in LA, who's trying to get an agent or a manager or a director to come notice them." So I just kind of blurted out, well, what about something like Year of the Slut? And she's like, "That's a great title. That's going to be your show. Go write it." And basically, I left her house, and for the next couple of months, I worked on writing a, you know, kind of crazy, outrageous one-woman show. The purpose was more to showcase my acting. So I played 10 characters. So a lot of the characters in the book, it was loosely based on my real life, being a naive Canadian girl from Maple, Canada, moving to New York to become an actor. However, for the play, I needed to stretch myself and show my range and play all these crazy characters. So that's where a lot of the characters came from. And then the nobody came. Some friends from acting class came, and my mom flew down from Toronto, which was nice, with one of her friends. But I didn't achieve the goal of what I set out to do, which was getting a manager or an agent or getting a director or producer to come see me and put me in a project. However, I realized I was more creatively fulfilled working on these crazy characters and this crazy story in my living room that I had ever been getting cast in somebody else's production. And this is something I talk about with other actors when we're starting out. We're kind of like the victim of how people cast us. And people will just kind of look at you quickly and be like, "Okay, you're the best friend, or you're the quirky this, or you're the that." And typecasting is great, but at the same time, you don't necessarily get to show what you're made of. So I kept working on the show, and I got into a festival in New York. I ended up winning the Audience Choice Award. And that's when several people that I didn't even know were coming up to me saying, "You have to make this into a chick lit book. This is going to be a great novel. You have to write the book. You have to write the book." So that's how the book came about.
That is super cool. I mean, I guess if you're an actor, you're already gutsy, but this is basically the gutsiest thing I do. And I'm sitting in front of a camera, right, in my home.
Yeah,
So,
but it's still challenging to put yourself out there no matter what, in what capacity, because anytime you're sharing a part of yourself with the world, you never know how it's going to be reflected back to you. And especially when we're hiding behind a screen, so to speak, um, the comment section, people do not hold back. People are going to run up to me after the show and be like, "Oh my God, you were terrible." But they will put that in the comments on a video.
that's true. That's true.
So, so, so I think what you're doing is just as gutsy.
Well, I never thought of, I haven't talked to that many actors. I'll say that for one. But number two, I really never thought of the fact that, yeah, if you have a certain love for a certain kind of story, number one, or a certain genre or story, or a certain kind of character and that's you have a natural draw to them. You may not, you may just be, it may just be a job, right? You may just be working in a job that, you know, 50%, just like any other job, 50% of the time you're not going to really be that like it that much. So it was neat that you made that jump and that creative jump for yourself.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like some of the characters I played like, a crazy version of my overbearing Jewish mother. I played a Ukrainian, very jaded bikini waxing lady, in her 50s. I played a gay leather fetish designer. I played, my broke musician boyfriend. I played all these different characters and it was just so much fun. And oh, and the best friend, the dominatrix best friend roommate. So I got to play so many things that I would never get a chance to play in real life. Nobody's casting me as a gay male fashion designer. And they shouldn't, you know what I mean? But for the purpose of a one-person show, there's kind of no limits in that respect. So I got to push myself creatively in ways I never would have had an opportunity to outside of that project.
Fun. And I'm assuming all these characters show up in the book.
So yes, some of them have been modified, some of them, and then there's lots of other characters that I didn't have time to play on stage. Um, so yes, most of them do show up in the book or some version of them show up in the book. And it took on a life of its own.
So is there a video we can go to and watch your one woman play?
There's some clips of it online. There's some clips on YouTube on my YouTube channel, Jen Lieberman. Um, but unfortunately, when you're doing a play, unless you have like a three-camera setup and like a really professional videography team, it looks really bad when it's just kind of a camera at the back of the theater. It looks very amateur, and I filmed it just for my own archival purposes and to look at the writing and the performing and see how to make it better. It wasn't really like meant for consumption.
Yeah. Yeah, rom-com is my about right now it's leading in my favorite genre. So that's all I'm watching. So I'm like, okay, I'm buying your book.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun. One of the best compliments I've gotten, which I've gotten from several people, and a lot of times I'll meet somebody, I'll tell them like, we'll get on the topic of, oh yeah, what do you do? Oh, I wrote this book. People will buy it like on Amazon on their phone, standing right in front of me, and then like a week later, I'll get a message from them like, oh my God, I got your book last night. I stayed up till 3 in the morning. I read the whole thing in one sitting. And for me, that's like the biggest compliment I could get as an author. Like the fact that, people found it so much fun and so engaging that they sat down to start the book, one or two chapters, and hours later, in the wee hours of the morning, like they're still there with it.
That is an amazing compliment. Yes. And I guess the other series on Netflix I was thinking about, I think it's called Younger, but it was also a made from a book series. It's about this housewife, her husband cheats on her, and she's like 45 or early 40s maybe. And I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that could, and so, but she's playing the part of a 25-year-old basically. So it's giving me
Yes.
those vibes too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it was she couldn't get hired because of her age. So she pretended
Right.
she was younger and was able to get the position. Yes, that's a great series also. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that this might have a life cycle as a series one day. We'll see what happens. There was some interest prior to the writers and actors strike in 2023. That strike went on for over 8 months and kind of killed some discussions I had in the works. But with book two coming out, I'm hoping that it'll create some new momentum for the book.
Okay, fine. So the name of the first book is Year of the What? Are we going to see the same character in the next book, or how's that going to
Yes.
go?
So, yes, the next book is a continuation, and it's all going to be under the Year of the What series because I don't want to have any problems with censorship. So, I originally published the book with the Year of the Slut title, and because of the word slut, I got censored from advertising on every social media platform, on Amazon, even it wouldn't even come up in a search on Amazon. So I was dead in the water for over a year just trying to find ways to advertise. And I couldn't advertise. And I could post about it on my social media. I could have a page for it on my social media. I could sell it on Amazon, but I couldn't get beyond my friend group. So you can't really have a successful business or book or anything if the only people you have to sell to are friends and family, unfortunately. So I ended up, after a year of really getting frustrated with the whole bot situation, because it is a female empowerment piece, it's sex positive, it's like a strong feminist piece, but the bots don't understand the nuance. So book two is called Year of the Bitch, but we're also going with the Year of the What umbrella because I don't know what they're going to do if I try to advertise something with the word bitch.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because it's maybe you make it like Year of the Pitch or something.
well, I
Like,
think Year of the What is just easy, book one, book
yeah.
two, and there's a book three. But basically, I feel like when we're younger and people want to attack us, the go-to word to attack a young woman is the word slut. And as we get older, we get more confident, maybe a little more successful, a little more assertive. The go-to word to attack us is bitch. So I'm playing with pejoratives that are weaponized against women.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can't give any spoilers as to what happens in Dana in book two, but is she gonna have her happily ever after, like at some point?
At some point she will, but there it is a trilogy.
Okay. It's
Um, so
it's
she's still on the roller coaster ride.
oh fine. All planned out. That's good. Because Emily in Paris, I'm like, you guys are dragging this out way too long. Like some of the endings of the season, I'm like, nope, can't do that. I need my happily ever after now.
Yeah. Well, even for example, like the TV series Friends, Ross and Rachel were always going to end up together. So, but because the show was so successful and ran for like 9 seasons, I think, they were never able to get together until that last season because as soon as they're together, the show's over.
Yeah, the show's effectively over. Yeah.
Because the tension of like, are they, aren't they, was kind of like the driving through line of the entire series. So I understand why people do that
Yeah.
for TV series, but at the same time, yes, it can get frustrating. And also if the source material, if you run out of source material, the TV writers don't always stick to the integrity of what the original writer had. And I'm using the Game of Thrones disaster example because I was a huge Game of Thrones fan, and that last season was just a disaster and a disappointment to everyone because the series went further than the books because
Right.
the writer had not finished the book series yet, but the TV audience was waiting for the next, like, what's happening?
Well, it's interesting because I took a screenwriting class and I converted one of my books to a screenplay for a movie. And it even ended up not completely different than the book, but with more of a different, I mean, you have to be so tight in the storyline and you can't branch out of that storyline. You need one
Yeah.
motive. And there was one motive in my book too, but I was able to add so much more to that. Whereas in the movie, it was like, okay, you have to keep it so fast paced. And I mean, it's a YA fantasy. So it has to be fast paced. It has to, in order to keep it going,
Yeah.
I had
And
to tighten it up and change it pretty significantly. So
Well,
that
there
was
is a
even myself
formula.
doing my own book, right? Yeah,
Yes, and that's the thing. It's so challenging because um and even a play is a totally different beast than a screenplay. Playwriting is its own entity. Screenwriting for a film is very different than screenwriting for a half-hour sitcom
Mhm.
versus a 1 hour drama or a procedural, and they all have their own formula. And of course, yes, you know, you can break the rules, but you need to learn the rules before you can break them. And especially if you're submitting, a lot of people who are reading it are looking for formula, and they're
Right.
looking, do they know the formula? Do they know when the commercial breaks come in? Do they know when, you know, for example, like in a screenplay, your inciting incident needs to happen between page 10 and page
Right.
15, you know, and a lot of times they'll read page 1 and they'll go right to page 10 because, you know, page 1 they just want to see like, okay, do you have a compelling opening? And then they go right to page 10 to see like what's happening on page 10. And if it's not gripping and it's not, you know, moving the plot along. And that's the other thing too, every single thing that happens in a screenplay needs to drive the plot forward,
Right.
whereas in a book, you can be contemplative with the characters. You can hear their inner voice. You can, you know, and also more descriptive in terms of scenery. You get more words,
Right.
basically. Yeah. So, and I do playwriting, I do screenwriting, and I do for screenwriting, I do both film and TV writing, and now I'm writing books. So, so yeah, it's, you know, you're kind of pivoting and finding the rhythm. And also, certain stories tell me what they want to be. So, I'm working on a play right now that has to do with mental illness. And, you know, people are like, "Oh, well, why don't you make that a screenplay?" I'm like, "No, this wants to be a play." You know, and then I have a TV series that I'm shopping around. It's called Eggs on Ice, and it has to do with fertility. And it's following 4 different families in their fertility journey. And that needs to be a series. There's too much going on
Right.
there, you know, for it to just be a one and done movie, you know, and that's the interesting thing about stories, but also they can have different life cycles. Like I never expected Year of the Slut to go beyond a four performance showcase. I didn't think it was something I would be working on stage for 3 years and then writing a book, and now it's turned into like a trilogy. Excuse me, I need to um so you just kind of never know the life cycle of a story, but good stories are recycled and repackaged, and you know, they can go from stage to screen, they can go from print to stage, they can go from print to screen, and a story is a story, you know, and if it's a good one, people are going to consume it.
It's so exciting. I'm so enamored with your story. Tell our audience where we can find you and your book when we're looking for it.
Yes, so the book is available on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, and it's available almost everywhere that books are sold. So if you're not an Amazon person, if you want to support Barnes and Noble, um, it's available there. The best place to go is my website, yearofthewhat.com, and there's several icons and several links that can lead you to the book, and more info about me if you want to stay in touch and get connected on social media. um, that's the best place. That's the best place to be.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And your cover is just the cutest. I'm in love with the cover too. So,
Thanks.
yeah. And I hope you'll come back when you release your next book. You'll have to shoot me a message. I'll have you back and we'll talk about Year of the Bitch.
Yes, I would love to. In the interim, I teach theater production at a university. So I do have a book that I've written. It's coming out next month, and it's called Independent Theater Production for the 21st Century in 7 Simple Steps. So if there's anybody out there who is interested in putting on a play and learning how to produce independent theater, you can follow me and you'll see announcements for that book. There's also a link or a button to subscribe to my newsletter on my website. So there will be announcements for that book as well.
Oh, great. Wow. Such multi-talented person. That's amazing.
I know it's a lot, but it all, I say, like most people say, like, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And the fact that like I was able to produce my own show and give myself opportunities, I decided that I wanted to help other actors and writers take matters into their own hands and create opportunities for themselves, because that's really where the magic is.
That's really neat. Yeah, because it seems like if you're in a small town too, and you don't have the opportunities for people to have that outlet for the audience or the actors, right? So, and that would be maybe a good resource to.
Yeah, and I know everybody's just throwing stuff up on screens these days, but if you want to do something that's more of a longer format, and if you are a performer or a playwright and you really want to put something up for a live audience because it's just a completely different energy, it's electrifying working on stage and having the audience right there reacting in real time. So it's definitely a lost art form that I think is about to have a new renaissance, because I think so much of us are getting the screen fatigue. And I think plays are going to have another moment soon.
Yeah, definitely. I think most people work in front of a computer. So when I read, I either listen in the car or while I'm doing a chore, or I have a physical book. So that's definitely two of my other go-tos. So
Yeah, and I do. I feel like people are getting to the point where like they want to leave the house again. They want to connect. And I think something that's really beautiful about the play is during intermission or after the play, you end up talking to strangers about the experience you had, and you're connecting in a way that you will never connect with somebody on a screen or in a chat room.
right. Yeah, that's a really good connection there. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, being here. Year of the What, and it's yearofthewhat.com. And we'll look forward to your next book as well.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.